We'll begin the discussion. A month ago, the county board did move to terminate an agreement with solid waste consultants. That was followed through with and that was executed. And at the same meeting, discussion was let's discuss at the Planning and Zoning Committee what we do next with the solid waste plan. That was done. And at that meeting, at the Planning and Zoning Committee meeting last month, there was, I thought, some thoughtful discussion on what our next steps are in terms of the solid waste plan. The fundamental question is, do we have three options, I guess. Do we leave the plan as is in terms of its analysis and discussion of our options on solid waste disposals? We revert to language that was in place 3 years ago, up till 2 years ago when the amendment was adopted, or do we amend with an eye towards some firmer language in the plan about our alternatives as far as alternative disposal methods and how all that works with recycling and those types of things. So the will of the committee that voted last month was to go ahead and vote, and with an eye towards moving that discussion back to this full board for a full board discussion and analysis. Discussion about what to do. So that's where we are, and I guess I would open it up to discussion as to what is your thoughts on what is our next step. Mr. Lear.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to take us back to a very basic. I know once a week I drive by my street and I see in front of the houses in my street 2 collection barrels. And I'm kind of excited to see 2 collection barrels because one I know is going to garbage and one's going to recycling. And I think that's a great positive that's happened in our community. But I'd like to back up a little bit also and remember when I was a real little kid and I'd go visit my grandparents. It turned out that when I visited the grandparents, I had to use an outhouse. It's quite a different experience to go out into an outhouse or have your mom explain what the purpose of a bed chamber was. Of course, the house I lived in had an indoor flush toilet, and so for decades why this indoor flush toilet was the way I took care of the basic needs that I had for myself. But I hear that recently toilets are a lot different than they used to be. Now there's low flush toilets, and I know they're controversial. And I even went and visited my sister-in-law recently, and when we were in her bathroom, she showed me there's a slow closing toilet seat. Something really different. Well, you know, I'm thinking it may be time for this county board to learn what new technologies are coming into the world, particularly new technologies in terms of waste disposal. And I think that's where I'm at. I want to hear more about what's possible in terms of waste disposal, in terms of a site that would not be an old garbage dump, but rather something that would be in line with the current technologies. Now, I would share that I heard the citizens' responses, and I think that it's useful for us to get good questions coming from citizens. Questions that raise objections to possible use of technologies that might not work. In many ways, that may have been an important element in what happened quite a few years ago when there were questions raised about one landfill that the city was sponsoring. Unfortunately, as I listen to the citizens, I'm afraid that there are cases where citizens are coming to us with either bad information or they're failing to understand that this county board has significant authority when it comes to setting limits in terms of what kind of applications we would take. And so I would hope that at least as much as possible, our discussion would focus on what are the new technologies, how can we provide for what I think just about every citizen wants to have, and that's some place to take care of what they put in those blue collection barrels each week. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Washington.
Let us go back in time and think of the many members of this board with the varied backgrounds that we have. And although our backgrounds may be varied, we're on this board for one main purpose. That's to take care of the needs of the county. Better than 20 years ago, this board made some decisions that affects the county today. Let us not forget that what we do today will affect the county in the near and in the distant future. Let us not succumb to pressures that are unaware or being made incorrect statements and judgments are being made simply because they're made. Let us make our decisions based on the greater knowledge that this board has of the financial future and the general future of this county. Let us do these things in honor of the people that have gone on and of the people that are coming. Let us not forget that at 1 minute of this time.
Other comments? Mr. Tripp.
I'd like to have you reword that third option along that line that George and Steve Lear were talking about. What was the wording in that? That we look at the future, alternates, and so on?
Well, I was reciting what I felt was the discussion at the committee, as far as the sense of the committee, to not just leave the language as is, but solidify the language about alternative disposal methods, other elements of a disposal facility if that were to come to pass. As far as sustainable and energy friendly, environmentally friendly, energy producing type technology. I think perhaps we're struggling a bit with the particular language, but that's okay. That's why we're talking here. I know Mr. Whitus has had some thoughts on how maybe expressing what it is we want in terms of Matt, if you want to jump in. Mr. Tripp, go ahead.
There's one more comment. I would never support a plan where we just take bags of garbage and dump it in a hole or dump it in a mound and cover it. I won't support that. But I am for what we're talking about right now. At least being knowledgeable of what's out there, which doesn't sound like too many people, even us, know what's to be expected in that area of new technology and separating everything.
Okay. Well, I think like Mr. Bosser said, I think there's two fundamental questions that I think this board needs to answer. Some of you may not want to answer them, but like I said in PZA and like I said last month at the county board, I think the first fundamental question is I think this board needs to take a stand whether what we feel on the solid waste plan. Like Mr. Bosser said, there's three options. You leave it as it is, you close it, or you amend it. We need to take a stand on what we want to do. I know there's people on both sides of it. I'll leave my opinion out for right now, but I think what Mr. Bossert is saying is I'm in full agreement that if the plan should not stay as it is. Now, whether you're against it or whether you're for it, it shouldn't stay the way it is, because I think, like Mr. Tripp said, like Mr. Lear said, it does need to be amended to take out some of the archaic language that's in there. Whether you're for a landfill or you're against a landfill, if it stays open, it needs to be amended. The other fundamental question is, should it stay open or not? Since he asked me to talk, my opinion is, I don't think it should stay open. The reason I don't feel it should stay open is it's been open for 2 years. Nothing has happened in 2 years, as far as any of us know. So why leave it open? People know that we were open for options, and I voted, and I will say, for 2 years ago, I voted to open it up. The reason I voted to open it up is to look and see what options were out there, to see if there were any partners that wanted to come forward, to see if anything was viable. Now, does that mean I'm for or against the landfill? No, that doesn't mean I'm for or against the landfill. So I want to make sure people understand that just by whatever vote we take today, whatever side of the fence you're on, I respect, but it doesn't mean we're voting for or against the landfill. We're voting for or against a dump, we're voting for or against any alternative technologies. That's not what we would do if we voted on something today. What we're voting on is to say, okay, we're going to keep it open. If you're for keeping it open, I respect that. You're open to look, see what other options there are. If you vote to close it, you don't feel that this county needs any sort of solution to manage with our waste for now or the future, like Mr. Washington said. My personal opinion is I think it should be closed because in the past 2 years since we've opened it, nothing has happened. People know we're open, that we're open for options, and since they know we're open for options, if there is somebody that has a viable solution to us, whether we have an open plan or a closed plan, they're going to reach out. They're not going to not reach out if we're a viable county, a viable location, there's a viable plan. They're going to reach out to us, and we can always do what we did 2 years ago. That's my opinion, and that's what I think the board should do. I think the board needs to take a stand. I said that last month. So my thing is that somebody, and I'll make a motion right now to close the solid waste plant, because that's what I feel. And then I think either way, whether it passes or not, I think the board should take a stand. You know, we've had people here, whether it's a small group or not, we've had people here many meetings asking us to do that. I think we owe it to them to at least take a position, which we haven't done in 2 years. I made a motion to close the solid waste plant.
Could you, Mr. Boyd?
I don't want to put words in your mouth, Mr. Vice Chairman, but I presume that by closing the solid waste plant, you are attempting to make a motion to reinstate the moratorium as it was prior to its reopening.
Exactly.
So we have a second?
Yes.
Discussion. So your motion is to reinsert the language that was in place prior to
Right.
2 years ago.
Yes.
Any other comments? Mr. Wheeler?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Now that there's a motion and a second, I would hope that we could take the next, if this does pass, as part of this discussion, would be take the next 2 years, because it will come up again, I believe, in 2 years, to figure out what we do want to be. Do we want to put the language in for the next go-around for a hybrid waste energy facility, only accepting sorted materials into the county? We have a lot of time to figure that out. So if we close it now, it doesn't mean we're at the end of the road on this discussion. Thank you.
Friends?
Yeah, I'm going to have to agree with Mr. Wheeler and Matt. I think we need to go ahead and close this. I noticed a minute ago Mr. Washington brought up that we are obliged to meet the needs of the county. Well, my understanding of meeting the needs of the county is not accepting Chicago garbage. That's well above meeting the needs of our county. I would go along at a later date if we pass this moratorium to maybe look into some alternate scheme of ridding garbage, but I definitely will never vote to have a dump in the ground, no matter if we put 10 liners in it. It's going to eventually kill our water supply.
Mr. Olthoff?
this motion, would this eliminate options?
Potentially.
So if we had someone with a waste to energy proposal come, we're shutting the door on that?
Well, if I can answer that, my thing is we've had it open for 2 years and nothing's come. In the future, does that mean if we're interested in that we can always reopen it just like we did 2 years ago?
Well, if someone comes to the county and it says, what is your solid waste plan? They say, we don't have one. That would probably go to some other county. I've seen the process work.
Sure.
And if the process would come here, the volume they need to make that work and produce electricity from waste, and I've seen it work, and it's wonderful. You would, and to Mr. N's point, you would need a volume of garbage to make that work efficiently and economically and make a payback. In Florida, the plant they built was for $75 million 20 years ago. It's paid for right now. Right now, that same plant would cost about 150 to 200 million, so you're maybe looking at a 30 to 40 year payback. But still, you're dealing with the garbage, you're producing electricity, and it's viable. My thought is leaving your options open to encourage that to take place. I know there's some development going on in Las Vegas with a similar project, so I'd be in favor of leaving our options open. It's not saying we're building a landfill, but we've got possibilities.
Mr. Byrd?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Moving forward, if we do decide to keep the plant open, we need clear and concise verbiage in there stating what we want. Again, like Mr. Wheeler said, we got to send out the message that here's what we want to be. Do we want to be just a landfill? No. Do we want to be, look down the road 50, 60 years from now, technology-wise, I think we need to be forward thinking, not looking back at technology that's going to be go away in 20, 30 years potentially. Thank you.
Other comments? Mr. Searoyford?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I agree with Mr. Tripp. I am not in favor of a pile of garbage, but I also do not want to, and this is just my personal history, I don't want our county to hammer the door on some waste energy possibilities. In my personal experience, my sister and her husband live in Denver, and just recently the company CH2E takes car tires and they incinerate them in a environmentally friendly way. It's a green company. They gather the muck oil out of the tires, which they take the tire and make oil out of it. They take the steel and recycle it. They take the carbon from the tire after that's all done and recycle that. So they take a useless piece of car part and turn it back into energy. And I would hate for us to do something at this point that would limit this new technology, and they've been up and running for almost a year now. It's a very viable company. They've contracted with Liberty Tire and get all their used tires coming into their facility and are recycling them. And I would hate for us to not have that option. So rewriting the language, I would be in favor of rewriting the language and hammer out the differences at this point in time. If this is the point in time to do it, let's do it now. Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Snipes?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I am not in favor of a moratorium. And I'll tell you why. A moratorium only puts to sleep what can then again be reality. What I suggest, after listening, I agree with Steve Lear. I do understand Matt and Andy's position. But what I would recommend is that we abolish the dump. That means put an end to it. And that we visit or revisit environmentally friendly, technological savvy, resolve or solutions. I believe that is what we need to do. I think that is what we are saying. So to close the door to technology is not something that we want to basically do. But I think emphatically we have stated that they don't want a dump
in Kankakee. So we need to abolish the dump, open up the doors to a solid waste plan that is technologically solid, that basically utilize and environmentally friendly, because our greatest asset is the water, and no one wants to mess up the water. We don't want to be like Gary. So I think if we go in that direction, I think it's a positive direction, because if we put the moratorium to sleep, another vote can come and resurrect it.
Stanley?
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to discuss a few things here on this. I was with Mr. Otoff, and we went over and inspected the Cabana incineration process in Leesburg, and Tommy Robinson, who's the chief engineer, talked to us, and we were discussing what's the possibility of getting it. He says, first of all, you've got to be friendly because there's a lot of places we could go, because they bring in the refuge that they need for miles around. Kankakee County couldn't generate enough refuge to keep one of these running. It's a byproduct. It's like soil waste or anything else. But my point is, if we do anything at all, if we send up any kind of red flags at all, we're discouraging these people from even taking a look at us. Because nobody's going to wait, because the need is getting greater. Right now, the average American produces 7 pounds of waste a day. So it's just a matter of time before it catches up with us big time, guys. And the other thing is, what's Christian like when you take your garbage and give it to somebody else to bury in their backyard? Why, we're closing the door to even being able to take care of our own waste. And that's silly. We may want to do that. We may find it's cost prohibitive someday to get the neighbor to take it down there, Decatur or wherever. So I say we keep it open, keep the doors open on things, and have discussions with who's going to come. This facility right here in Cabana functioned on 5 acres inside of a commercial industrial park. You'd have never known it was there. So there are facilities out there, but you can't afford to put any type of barrier or red flag in front of these people when they come, because they're in demand, believe me. These places are in demand. We're just not big enough to attract them yet. So I say we keep it open. Thank you.
Mr. Reinfeldt?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Without going into very much other discussion, the whole idea from my perspective is the county needs to run like a business, need to be able to pay bills. Any option that there would be out there needs to stay open. It doesn't mean that we have to accept any one of them. It needs to stay open. I am against closing this. That's all. Thank you.
Anybody else the first time? Mr. McConnell?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll take the position with Mr. Whitus. Excuse me, but in view of what has been said, and I agree with a lot of what has been said, Mr. Washington has some great points. In spite of all this, I'm not in favor of the dump either, but I'm not in favor of looking at something. However, I've been elected by the citizens of the 27th district, and the ones that have come to me are not in favor of it, and they're in favor of closing the moratorium. So irregardless of where I stand, my first position I have to take is the people elected me. So I'm taking that position to close the moratorium.
Anybody else? First time? Mr. Stauffenberg?
Thank you, Chairman. I think I've stated before that I would never be for another landfill. The process that we went through to close the one out on 45, 49 there, the process that we've gone through to not let the Bellini landfill come to fruition is very lengthy, very troubling, and being a farm boy living on the farm, I just would never be in favor of another dump landfill. I've been here long enough to know, though, that I agree with Mr. Whitus. We can close it, we can open it again next meeting. I mean, it's not like it's indefinite, you shut the door on people. He deals in Florida. I really like what they do. I've seen Mr. Althoff's presentation and Mr. James's. That's good technology, good stuff, and I think that's what we need to look at somewhere down the road. But just because we do close it today, it doesn't mean we can't reopen it again if these technologies come before us. I've heard they're unfeasible for our area because we don't have enough garbage. We'd have to take outside of our area's garbage. Waste Management seems to have the doors locked on all this area, and they buy off these technologies too to keep them from coming. So, but I would agree with Mr. Whitus. So it's time to put an end to this. I'm tired of hearing it too from my constituents. And be over with.
Anybody else first time? Mr. Hess.
Thank you, Chairman. 2 years ago when we voted to change the plan, the word Echo Campus came up. In 2 years, I don't think Echo Campus has ever been used. When I voted to take the moratorium off, we discussed Echo Campus with recycling, recovering of the gases, everything. And for some reason, somehow, we went from that to a landfill. I am opposed to a landfill. I am not, and I repeat again, I am not opposed to an Echo Campus that would come in and generate revenue for the county, along with reclaiming whatever could be reclaimed and recycling, gases, and that.
I guess what I'm hearing is support for eco-campus information about that type of technology. I'm also hearing an absolute, a very strong opinion about landfill. We need to understand, I think, before perhaps we make a move on connection with eco-campus and how that relates to landfill. Whether it's feasible to even discuss waste to energy without having a companion landfill with it. We have a smaller scale. That's the type of information I think we need to discuss and have better information before we start drafting a modification to it. That's my opinion. I'll differ with Mr. Whitus in one respect. He pointed out that there's been no action in the last 2 years. I beg to differ. There's been, as we've said openly, there has been contact with the county. There are interested parties. Again, the nature of businesses lends itself to these types of operations are very confidential about their interest. I will tell you right now that the interest we had has backed away in the last couple of weeks. So I'm just being open about it. It doesn't mean there's not other interests out there, but right now the contact that we had is backed away. Not so much about what's going on here. There's some other factors. That's what I want to say.
Can I ask you a question?
Yes.
Since you did say last month that there was an interested party, now you're saying they've backed away, but you're saying there's other interest. Has there been other people that have reached out to us that you know of, other than the one party?
It's been some very tentative contact.
The answer's no.
No other. Well, nothing that's solid right now.
Well, that's just curious. But we currently do not have anybody interested right now.
Not that we could say is. Okay, so second time around. Let's start with Mr. Tripp. I'm sorry, Mr. Lindjust, first time. Okay.
Well, I guess my question is, if we put the moratorium back on and we have someone come to us that has an alternative way to dispose of waste, such as what Mr. Althoff talked about, waste to energy, and the moratorium's in place, do they look at it and say, oh, they have a moratorium, are they gonna come to us and say, you have a moratorium, but can you lift that moratorium? I mean, I don't understand what sense it makes to have a moratorium if you're looking at, if you wanna look at other viable ways to dispose of the waste and new technology. So why not just leave it open? I don't think what I'm hearing here is I don't think anybody's in favor of a conventional landfill. Everybody's talked against it. And personally, I would love to find a way to do it other than bury it. I think that's archaic. I don't think it's good for the environment. I think, there's no studies to prove it, but I wonder what the landfill that we have closed, I wonder what that's still doing to our environment. So I think we're all in favor of some other form of technology, but I would think I would want to leave the moratorium. I want to leave it open so that if people come to us, we can evaluate it. And I don't want people, if we would vote that way, I don't want people running out here and voting, oh, they voted for a landfill. We're not voting for a landfill, people. We're trying to figure this problem out in the most technological way that we can. I agree, we have a problem with our own waste. What are we going to do when this county starts growing and we have more and more waste? I find it a little bit morally incomprehensible that we think it's okay to dump our garbage on somebody else when we don't want somebody else to bring their garbage down here and dump it here. I think that's hypocritical. But I think we need to find a way that's technologically right for this county and for everyone involved. And I think by leaving it open, I think we can do that. I think if we close it or put the moratorium back on, we eliminate people from coming in to give us ideas. Because they're going to say, well, they have a moratorium, so why even bother? That's just my opinion.
Anybody else first time? Okay, second time around, we'll start with Mr. Tripp.
Okay, is it possible for Mr. Whitus to change his wording to do both what we're trying to do?
Okay.
Why come back
If you remember what I said when I made the motion, I said there's two things I think that need to happen. I said the first was I think this board needs to take a stand that we haven't taken in the last 2 years, just so the public knows what our stand is. That's why I made the motion, because I think we need to vote on what our stance is as far as on the solid waste plan. So that's why I made the motion.
Can we do that in the same motion?
Then I think after that, then I think this whole other discussion comes up about, we haven't voted, but I can tell you what's gonna happen. I mean, anyway, then I think there's the next phase to that, to the discussion that everybody's talking about. If it passes, it's over. If it doesn't pass, then you go into the next discussion on what the board would like to see. And to me, what it sounds like, just like everybody else is echoing, they want to keep the options open, but they want to limit the scope of what those options are. And that's what we talked about in PZA. But from my standpoint, I think the board needs to do the vote on closing the moratorium, so that to answer these people that have been coming the last several months, last several years, so that we owe them an answer. And I've been getting calls asking us to take a stand, so that's what I'm asking this board to do.